So in this video, we're going to talk about tourist information kiosks or concierge desks. These are great places to sell your tourist attraction. So let's hop over to the center of our mind map for travel marketing strategies and tactics for tourist attractions and experience. Before I continue, click below to subscribe so you can get all the tips on how to promote your tourist attraction. So let's continue. And we're going to scoot up over here past B2C. So we're going to sell directly to the customer via offline methods. So first, let's talk about the elements involved in a tourist information kiosk or a concierge desk. Here we go. We have all these things to consider. So this video is going to be a little more in-depth, but since this is an important distribution channel, it deserves our attention. So the elements, you have the actual store or kiosk or a counter, right? So concierges usually have a counter, where a store or a kiosk have one of these. And if you're approaching a store and making a partnership with a store or a kiosk where they will sell your tourist attraction, you might want to consider paying to stand out so that you have a poster, you have something that attracts attention so that whenever someone walks in, you're one of the main things to do in the city. At least it will seem that way, right? Same thing with a counter, but it is a little harder, right? Because the counter of a hotel, a concierge desk counter is a little bit more controlled because you're usually in a nice hotel. Nice hotels have a very controlled design. So you can't just put up posters or leave flyers lying around or put up a point of purchase display on the counter. You usually have to be a little bit more timid. Of course, you should try to get whatever you can. The other thing to remember is that whatever you leave there will be taken by tourists because it's on the counter. People are paying to stay at the hotel, so they think that everything in the hotel is free and they're entitled to it. So if you leave, for instance, a pen with the name of your company, that pen will be gone within half an hour. If you leave a notepad with the name of your company, the whole notepad will be taken, not just a piece of paper, but the whole notepad, and so on. So even if you leave, for instance, an iPad, people will think that they're entitled to it and then basically steal it and claim that they thought it was included in their stay. It does happen. So the other element involved in the concierge desk or an information kiosk is the receptionist, right? So the person who is attending that counter or store, right? You want to invite them all to a fam tour, like you should be doing with everybody in your trade, in your travel trade. If it's a restaurant, invite them to eat there every 6 months, regardless of productivity. So if they're producing at least something, of course, if they're producing zero, then you can forget them. Maybe they don't sell tickets. They claim they sell tours, but they don't sell tours. Maybe they're just, wanting a free dinner, right? But if they are producing a little bit, invite them over and over again, especially if it's a restaurant where people can go several times without getting bored. If it's, for instance, a roller coaster, they might want to go once every 2 years or so. If it's a park, they might want to go once a year. It depends really. But you want to invite them as often as you can because they are your distribution channels, right? See if they accept sales commission, right? So some concierges in Europe, especially in Europe, I think there is it's not a rule, but it's just an understanding that concierges don't accept commission. Throughout the rest of the world, they do take commission from the tourist attraction. So you might want to check with them and say, hey, do you guys accept commission? And how can I get your hotel or how can I get your information kiosk to sell tickets for my tourist attraction? Right? Some information kiosks, especially if they are sponsored by the state tourism board, some of them are not allowed to make commission, some are. So you always want to approach it carefully so that you don't insult anybody just by, showing up and saying, hey, I'll give you 10%. If they don't accept the commission, then help them out indirectly. Like, send a pizza, on a Friday, and beer, for the staff. Send them do something nice for them every now and then because they'll start to remember you, and sooner or later, you'll be at the tip of their tongue. If they do accept commission, then offer a traditional 10% of the ticket sales. Of course, you must have some very good ticketing system, something that will track the sales that they made, right? So in a precise manner. You will want to leave a take one flyer for the exhibitor. They usually have an exhibitor of flyers, and you might want to say, hey, can I leave my flyers here? Is there a space for them? And you have to leave it up to them. Even if there is a space available, you have to make sure that they're the ones placing it in there instead of you just stuffing it in there while they're not looking, right? If they don't have one, then find a flyer holder. Make sure you write your name, the name of your company at the bottom of it, scratch it into their acrylic, because other companies will take it and move it to a different location, and you want to know which one, and they all kind of look the same, especially acrylic ones. So you want to know which one is yours and who's been stealing, which one of your colleagues from the travel trade has been stealing your flyer holders, right? For the flyers, right, you're going to need flyers. The receptionists also need flyers to help explain how the tour works, what's included, and show some visuals. So follow flyer design template and size. Basically, tourist attraction flyers tend to follow the same dimensions, which is 8 inches by 4 inches or 20 centimeters tall by 10 centimeters wide. Don't be too verbose, right? You want to stick to the visuals. You want to make your flyer look great. Use the best photos you have. Make sure you go through it, get it done by a designer so it doesn't look amateur. And the idea is to show instead of telling, right? So you want to show as much. So have as many photos as you need. Of course, you do need one amazing photo at the top. So don't just stuff a lot of photos. And if the photos are too small, then they won't communicate. And the other thing is that you might want to get it printed every 3 months, because you might want to make adjustments. You might notice that there is a typo, or maybe you have finally, or maybe you do have a better photo, or whatever it is. You don't print enough for like 2 years, just print enough for 3 months and then get it printed again. It'll cost you a little bit more, but it will allow you to evolve and perfect the art of flyers. Maps. That's what people usually go into information kiosks and concierge desks looking for, right? Maps are very important, right? So you want to pay to be featured in the free maps, and you want to be careful that you're not paying to be featured in the paid maps. The paid maps get a lot less distribution. People usually expect maps to be free. So if there's a company selling maps, they might not be selling that many, and then why pay to be featured in something that doesn't get a lot of eyeballs, right? So if the map is popular, buy an ad in it, and check to see if you can pay with barter, right? If you can, that'd be great, because if you're a restaurant and the map publishers, like your restaurant, then you can say, well, how about I pay you half in cash, half in coupons, right, for our restaurant, in barter vouchers. And they may accept, especially if you have a great restaurant, and you can say, hey, you guys can do your meetings there. You can invite other clients, so that you can do your sales meetings there, and they might be interested. The publishers might be interested. You also want to visit other information kiosks and hotel receptions to see which are the most popular maps. So visit as many as you can, many hotels and information kiosks, and you might notice that your city, your destination might have 3 or 4 maps. Figure out which one's the most popular one. Talk to them. Ask them which maps they like to give out. Because sometimes they like to give out a certain map, but there is one that gets more copies printed. So figure out which ones they'd like to give out, which one's the most popular, which one has the most visibility. That's what matters most, is visibility. Number of maps. In other words, quantity. If your destination doesn't have a map, then you might consider creating one. Or if your destination has a lot of maps, you might want to consider creating a topic-specific map. For instance, you might want to, if you're a fast food restaurant in New York, and there are thousands of tourist attractions in New York, you might want to consider coming up with a map that's called the fast food map to New York, or the hot dog or the street food map to New York, or whatever your niches, the museum, the art museum galleries and maps of New York. So something that appeals to your target market, and a lot of hotels will be very happy to have something that's niche because it'll make them look very professional, because they'll have not just generic content but specific content. So you might want to consider creating your own. And since it's a very specific map to your niche, you might want to get your colleagues and other trade companies that don't compete with you directly to help pay for the map. So if you're selling hot dogs, you might want to consider a company that's selling pizza, another one that's selling hamburgers, right? So you can partner up and then get these printed, and you don't need to get millions printed. You just need to get enough, and you can test it out. So print, let's say 10,000, distribute them to the hotels and information kiosks and street side travel agencies, and see how long it lasts. Another important thing for you to do at information kiosks is, and some hostels allow posters on the wall. Most hotels don't. But some hotels do have a little poster acrylic in their elevators. So you might want to see if you can get featured there. So whenever guests are in the elevator, they can consider your tourist attraction. Some information kiosks have so many posters on the wall that you might want to see what color yours should be so that you stand out. For instance, you'll notice that, for instance, all these posters will be using blue. A lot of blue everywhere, because it's a nice, beautiful day, and they're using a lot of blue. You might want to do one that's red, just to stand out. Otherwise, you would just be another blue thing on the wall. TVs and screens. Some information kiosks and some concierge desks have TVs and screens, flat screens and other types of screens, and maybe iPads or something. You want to get your video there, and the video that you got done professionally by a YouTuber, you want to get it placed there. And then the hotel or the information kiosk might say, okay, the video has to be 30 seconds, and you will have a 30-second video that you can send over by email, and they'll play it in a rotation. And even if they're charging, you might want to consider seeing if it helps to stimulate sales. So you test it out for a month and see if this information kiosk is selling your tours, and then you can see whether it's worthwhile or not. Another place to consider advertising is in the tourist Wi-Fi. A lot of cities have free Wi-Fi for tourists, and sometimes they either have a walled garden or they just have free Wi-Fi, right? But usually they get people to sign up before they can access the free Wi-Fi, and they usually land on a confirmation page. You might want to test to see if putting an ad on the confirmation page pays off. It's usually, people are usually so desperate for Wi-Fi that they don't spend a lot of time on the confirmation page. They'll just ignore it. But even if it's for a split second, and if you do have an ad that does communicate within that split second, it's very catchy and attractive, then, some people will start to consider you. Of course, you don't want to pay too much for that. But at the same time, if it's Wi-Fi for all tourists in a popular destination, for instance, in Barcelona, that gets 40 million tourists, and all of them will connect to the Wi-Fi at some point, then you're reaching out to 40 million visitors, right? So you might want to consider getting your ad on the confirmation page. Some Wi-Fi for tourists have a walled garden. The walled garden is basically a limited Wi-Fi. So basically whoever owns the Wi-Fi system can say which sites can be visited. So they may include TripAdvisor, they may include Google Maps, they may include, the local travel guide, for instance, the Barcelona travel guide, and nothing else. So they can just visit these 3 or 4 sites and not the rest of the internet. So for tourists, that might be useful because they might get the info that they need on TripAdvisor, on Google Maps, and on, for instance, Lonely Planet or whatever travel guide that that local destination includes. And if the information kiosk doesn't have Wi-Fi, then you might want to consider paying to create your own Wi-Fi for tourists, where the walled garden is basically TripAdvisor, Google Maps, and your site. In other words, you'll be channeling everybody who's using the free Wi-Fi to basically visit your site. So that might be a little useful. You might want to reach out to me if you want to do that. I've been doing that for a few destinations in Brazil. And one of the tools I like to use is Tanasa. I can explain this in a call so that you can get it up and running and promote your business. Now, let's talk about the goals. What are the goals for tourist information kiosks and concierge desk efforts? The goal is to get your material properly distributed and to get receptionists to recommend you. And recommend, it could be just recommending itself, like giving a suggestion, or it could be selling, right? So you want to do a little bit of sales training with the receptionists. You want to invite them to a fam tour. You want to send them videos of how it works, and leave a cheat sheet, maybe laminated, so that whenever they are in the middle of selling, they can find this cheat sheet and answer questions that will emerge from tourists, right? So another goal is to get your material properly distributed, get flyers and posters in visible and accessible areas. That is your goal, right? If you can get flyers and posters available, and the receptionists are familiar with you, and if they've done a tour with you, then they're very likely to sell you, especially if they had an amazing time during a familiarization tour, right? In other words, a fam tour. So if they had a blast, they'll remember you because they've been there. They'll have videos lying around, and you'll have material available, right? And what are the KPIs? The KPIs are the sales per month. How many sales did a certain information kiosk, a certain hotel concierge desk, how many did they sell, and also if they've been distributing. So if you show up a month from now and you find out that you left 1,000 flyers and all the 1,000 flyers are still there, something happened. Either the flyers were put away in a box or stashed in a drawer, and they were just hidden, which is not very nice, right? Because you made all these flyers, you want them distributed. People aren't going to buy it if they're not looking at your flyers or considering your flyers, and you need to make tourists aware. So you want your flyers distributed. So these are the two things to look out for a month from now when you come visit the information kiosk or concierge desk again. So now let's talk about tools. What tools can you use to help sell your tourist attraction? Information kiosks, interactive information kiosks. We've seen these a million times for the last 25 years, and here's the thing. None of them work. Everybody's trying to do one over and over and over again, and there isn't one that works. They work, but nobody likes using it, so they don't work. So technically they work. You can click around, and then find, a restaurant that is sushi, that is vegan, that is whatever, but people don't end up buying. It's too cumbersome. The usability isn't intuitive enough for tourists. So, and they usually get lost. As soon as they click a few times, they're lost. They don't know where or how to get back. So anyways, don't bother advertising on interactive information kiosks. Another tool that can be useful is an in-store closed circuit camera. In other words, if the information kiosk or the hotel concierge is willing to put a camera that you can watch from a distance, that might be very useful from afar, from another location, because then you can see how the receptionists are interacting with the tourists. You can see if they're selling it properly, if they're using the wrong language, if they're approaching the tourist the wrong way regarding your tourist attraction, or if they're not even pitching your tourist attraction, right? So this is a little hard, but if you can get at least one, that might be very useful. And also the ticketing system is very useful because that will control your stock, so you don't get overbookings. right? So especially most tourist attractions have a limited capacity. Very few have unlimited. A cooking class is limited. Jet ski rental is limited. Even amusement parks are limited, especially during high season or weekends. Right? So you want a ticketing system that will not just be able to charge a customer and give them a ticket, but also control the stock, right? So some of these ticketing systems are, so one is Gateway. Let's click over here and see what they look like. Gateway ticketing, tourism and attractions. So that's one way, one system. Ticket Tailor is another system. Okay. And the last one, Booking Boss. Ticketing and booking software attractions. Okay. And the other one that is on that list that I mentioned in the other video is Bokun. Bokun is also a very good system for controlling your tours and selling your tickets to your attraction. So these are some of the tools. So that covers tourist information kiosks and concierge desks. I hope you found this video useful. If you'd like to receive more, just hit subscribe. That will keep me motivated to keep on producing more videos like this so that you can get more and more content on how to promote your tourist attraction. Second, visit mindmap.works so you can access links to resources regarding all the tactics covered in this video. Thirdly, contact me at chris@mindmap.works with any question. We can try to reply directly by email, but if it's more complicated, we might set up a consulting hour or two. See you in the next video.